Well, I hate to open a show with more bad news, but unfortunately, life and death are something that's always with us. And unfortunately, three people have passed away since I've been on the air last time. First, Stuart Margolin, 92, from the Rockford Files and a lot of other movies. Fun fact was that before they became actual actors, Stu and Sid Haig were roommates for a while. The other passing was Craig Ledbetter, who started European trash cinema and turned a lot of us on to some films that we would have never heard of unless we had picked up his magazine. And this one is really sad for the Night of the Living Dead community in general and Living Dead fans. Was Nick Tallow, passed away this week. I was talking to Kyra Schoen last night on the phone, and she told me it was aggressive bone cancer that had spread through his bladder, and he was in a really bad way, and unfortunately he passed away. I believe he was like 74. I only maybe met him in passing because when you do all these conventions, you sort of, you meet a lot of people, but sometimes you only meet them briefly because you're doing stuff or you're doing a panel or something like that. You really don't get to sit down and talk to them. But I know through the fans and everything else that Nick was a hell of a guy, great guy, a lot of fun. Wasn't out there to do cons to make money, just wanted to network with people and make friends. And him and Kyra were very close. And, I'm sorry that he passed away. December has never been a really good month for me, being that my own father passed away a few years ago in December. And last year was really bad because of losing Gary Clark and Carter Stevens, and also Mindless Mike Frigerio, who were close friends of mine, and unfortunately passed away in December. But I fucking hate to talk about this shit. But let's get on to bigger and better things, maybe, because I've been down for the last 48 hours with some kind of weird stomach virus, which basically, the only way I can describe it is I had a bunch of fucking mice in my colon with sharp claws. But during that time, I was sort of stuck in my recliner, not being able to move, and flicking on Tubi, and watched 3 spaghetti westerns sort of back to back. Now, the quality on these wasn't very good, and they were obviously VHS rips, so you had to deal with what you had to deal with. But it opened a bigger question for me, unfortunately, with that. First one I saw was This Man Can't Die with Guy Madison. And this is a DVD R of it, but it's on Tubi as Long Days of Hate. And it's about a guy named Martin Benson, who's an undercover operator who's trying to break up a gun ring. And the gun runners basically go out and kill his family. And he doesn't want to do this anymore, but he's offered a shitload of money to do it. So he goes off. Now, this thing is one of the cheaper ones. I don't know if it's set out that way, because initially I was getting kind of bored with it because people were talking, and when they stopped talking, the dialogue continued. For the chase scenes, they ripped off the music from for a few dollars more from those chase scenes. And in this version, This Man Can't Die, somebody dubbed in their voice instead of Guy Madison's voice. So they get to the shoot-ups, which are really pretty good at the end. A lot of double crosses and triple crosses. And the love interest is Rose, I can't pronounce her name, but she was the chick in Lady Frankenstein. Roseanne, I don't know. Fuck it, it's early in the morning. What do you want from me? But that one, it looked like it was a VHS rip and frozen a couple places. Another one I saw, and This Man Can't Die, was from 1968. 1972 had A Noose is Waiting, Trinity, directed by actually starring George Martin, Jorge Martin as Trinity Harrison, who has been gone for 6 years to track down the guy who killed his brother. His wife and son are the only ones that know he was gone and take umbrage to the fact that he's returning after 6 years, and his little girl doesn't know who he is, and The ranch is in trouble, as all the ranchers are in trouble, because this one evil bastard is trying to take over the ranchers. And he has 3 hired killers to do it. And of course they slap Trinity around, try to provoke him into using his guns. And there's a mysterious bounty hunter named Scott, played by Klaus Kinski, who has real long hair and smokes a big cigar. And his business model is if they're wanted dead or alive, he kills them. Because as he explains to the sheriff, it's cheaper to do it this way than feeding them on the way back. But there is a bounty on Trinity, $5,000 alive. Not dead or alive, alive. But Scott doesn't know who Trinity is, has no idea what he looks like, and is in town questioning Joe, who is actually Trinity. Joe is now working for his ex-wife, who is definitely anti-gun and does not want a gun picked up. But being that a few innocent ranchers are being killed and one is locked up on a set-up charge of murdering a bank guard and robbing the bank in the middle of the night for $2,000, his son is killed. Trinity's son wants to slap on a gun and do this, but he can't. But he is picked up by Scott, who gets a wanted poster with his likeness on it and wants to ride him in. But as they're going into the town to be locked up, another rancher is being terrorized, and for whatever reason, Scott gives Trinity his Winchester, where he blows one of the killers away. And then somehow gets a hold of Scott's horse and takes off, leaving Scott stranded. He gets back into town, where he decides to take on the remaining killers as they decide to hang this poor rancher. Well, Scott gets there at the same time and actually blows a guy away who's trying to put a bullet into Trinity's back. Trinity is wounded in his arm, takes out all the bad guys, but has to go back with Scott. So as they're riding off, Trinity's family is reunited and decides to ride up and say goodbye. But as Trinity turns around, he notices Scott is riding off without him. An odd sort of sympathetic role for Kinski, because usually he plays a scumbag. Again, I don't think this is available on DVD either. And our third in the trifecta is The Deserter from 1970, starring, Bikim Faruko. I can't even pronounce his fucking last name. He should have changed it to some Americanized name to get over. I mean, the guy's from Yugoslavia. He's not bad in the role, because he plays this Captain Caleb who finds his wife skinned by the Apaches in his burnt-out ranch and is forced to shoot her. He also goes back to the fort and is pissed off at his commanding officer, Richard Crenna, and shoots him twice and rides off. Now he disappears for a lot of years, killing the Apaches. Sort of reminiscent of the Richard Boone film, Rio Conchos, where Boone finds his family massacred and spends his spare time murdering Apaches. So this is all coming to fruition with the General Mills, played by John Huston, who visits the fort and wants to sit down with Caleb. Of course, nobody can find Caleb. They send out a patrol to find him, and they come back beat up, and the lieutenant goes, "This man's a devil, we never saw him coming." So they send out his 2 favorite scouts, played by Ricardo Montalban and Slim Pickens, who bring him back. The deal is that Mills wants him to go into the Apache territory and take out a whole gang of Apaches that will basically kill every white and friendly Indian in the Southwest. So to do this, you have to fight like an Apache. So he is promised a pardon if he does this, and has to put together a brigade, which in the ads it's called the Deserter and his Bloodbath Brigade, which is comprised of Ian and Bannon, Woody Strode, Albert Salney, Chuck Connors, Patrick Wayne, few other people that you would recognize, like I said, Ricardo Montalban, Slim Pickens. So they're going to go out and do this, and Caleb is promised a pardon. So they train, they do all kinds of other stuff, and they ride out to destroy the Apaches. There's several wild fucking gunfights involved in this whole thing. The cast is great, although most of them get wiped out in the final battle. They go back to find out that basically the only survivors are Ricardo Montalban, Ian Bannon, Patrick Wayne, and Richard Crenna, and Caleb. Unfortunately, General Mills, played by John Huston, has to renege on his promise and is told he has to arrest the guy. officer played by Richard Crenna goes, well, how can we arrest Caleb when he was killed in the fighting? So all of the survivors agree to put in writing that Caleb was killed in the fighting, basically freeing him. Now, this ain't a bad movie. The problem is it's a shitty VHS rip with certain parts of the dialogue censored. There's one whole scene that just jumps to another scene, and it's dark, it's washed out, and unfortunately it's the only thing we have. Now, why none of these films are on DVD, especially The Deserters, is a mystery to me, because just the cast would warrant a DVD release. And the fact that it was a Dino De Laurentiis production, and it was a major release in the US. It's been on several VHS rip-offs back in the VHS days on Bingo Home Video as Ride to Glory, Devil's Backbone, and The Deserter. It is on one of those comp spaghetti western things, and that's probably the rip they took this out of to put it on Tubi. Again, this is another mystery of why, all these vanity companies are re-releasing the same fucking tired shit day in and day out, but they always seem to focus on the exploitation and horror, but never the action or the spaghetti westerns, which were a huge part of the Grindhouse thing. And another thing is, these films have not been released on DVD. Here's one. Mean Frank and Crazy Tony. Of course, it did have a shitty VHS release. But the problem was, this film runs 96 minutes and it was cut down to 71 minutes for a VHS release. It stars Tony LaBianco and Lee Van Cleef. Lee Van Cleef is playing a mafia don, and he plays it well. The film is really well done, except for the fucking comedy by Tony LaBianco. But again, here's another one that screams for a DVD Blu-ray release and has been fucking ignored. This was 1973. The same with Shoot, 1976, where you have Cliff Robertson, Ernest Borgnine, and Henry Silva meeting a bunch of armed men across a river and having a shootout with them and knowing something horrible is about to happen if they go back. Well, they do go back. Now, from what I understand, this thing is floating around on YouTube. I don't know what, kind of a print it is, but again, another major release by Avco Embassy back in the day that is basically sitting in limbo. And then again, from 1985, The Jungle Warriors with Christopher Conley and Lee Van Cleef, directed by Antonio Margheriti. Not really a great movie, but it's sort of like one of the last things that Lee Van Cleef did before his passing, and was released by MGM. So again, I don't know why Jungle Raiders never got some kind of DVD release. The same with El Condor from 1970. Yeah, it's out on the Warner Archives DVD-R burn, but here we have another film. Lee Van Cleef playing against type as a fucking crazy prospector. Jim Brown, Patrick O'Neill, Iron Eyes Cody, Elijah Cook Jr. Again, it's a Warner Brothers release, written by Larry Cohen. Why the fuck isn't this out? Another one, Young Fury from 1964. Loaded with character actors, Lon Chaney Jr., Richard Arlen, and Virginia Mayo, and the last film appearance of William Bendix. Rory Calhoun is the main star. John Agar is the made bad guy. For 64, it's pretty over the top and violent, and was released by Paramount. But again, really bad copy floating around on YouTube. So, like I said, my question is, you got all these vanity companies re-releasing the same fucking played out shit year after year, and here is a whole handful of shit that would probably sell, yet it sits in limbo. So, again, what the fuck do I know? But that's our show for today. I am feeling a little better, and we're heading into Christmas week, so I'll probably be doing a little Christmas video down the road. So, until then, thanks for subscribing, thanks for tuning in. Above all, stay safe, and try to stay well, because there's a lot of fucking weird shit floating around out there that makes me want to spend the entire winter indoors away from fucking people. So on that happy note, we'll catch you on the flip side.